So Mike Johnson has officially been reelected Speaker of the House. He's going to have one of the slimmest majorities in modern history. And there is already, so now that, that part is done, it took 2 rounds of voting, but he got some of the holdouts to vote for him. Now the hard part is what they're actually going to do in the first 100 days, not even 100 days, the first year, 6 months of office. So let's just take a quick listen to what Johnson was saying this morning on Fox News.
Have you spoken with President Trump about what he prefers? Does he want one large reconciliation package to include border security, deportations, as well as tax extensions? Or does he want 2, as Senator Lindsey Graham has been working on?
Yeah, he and I have talked about this quite a bit, as you might imagine, over the last few months, determining the pros and cons of the two different strategies. I respect Lindsey Graham and all my friends who kind of preferred a 2-step strategy. The idea would be get something done on the border and maybe defense spending right out of the blocks very quickly in what we would call a skinny reconciliation bill, and then do the rest of it in a larger chunk later. But I think at the end of the day, President Trump is going to prefer, as he likes to say, one big, beautiful bill. And there's a lot of merit to that, because we can put it all together, one big up or down vote, which can save the country, quite literally, because there are so many elements to it, and it'll give us a little bit more time to negotiate that and get it right. That doesn't mean that we won't come right out of the gates, full-fledged, right out of the beginning of the Congress. And so we'll be addressing border. We've got a number of bills just over the next 2 weeks, Maria, that we're going to address the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. I think that there's some things that are so common sense that we've got to fix on the border. We might even be able to get some Democrat votes on some of that legislation, but we'll pass it out of the House and send it over to the Senate and get it ready for when President Trump takes office on January 20th. We have a lot to do and a short amount of time to do it in.
So if you are doing everything or most of the priorities in one big, beautiful bill, as you say, that includes what? Walk us through what that would include.
Well, it'll have a lot of pieces. We made a lot of campaign promises. President Trump did as well. And reconciliation is the way to get it done. Why? Because you avoid a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. So reconciling the budget, which we will pass in early February, is how we'll get all of our committees involved, committees of jurisdiction, on all these big issues. What are they? Well, obviously, we have to secure the border. We've got to make sure that our Border Patrol agents and our immigration enforcement agencies have the right directives from the White House, but also the right resources to do their job and secure that border once and for all. We've got to take care of the dangerous illegal criminals who have come over, and all that's part of it as well. And we've got to shift immediately to the economy. Maria, you talk about every day. We've got to revive the U.S. economy, and we can. We know how to do it. Part of that is preventing the largest tax increase in U.S. history, which would happen automatically at the end of next year if we don't get our ducks in a row. So we're going to make sure that happens. We're going to incentivize American companies to manufacture in the U.S. again. And we're going to make sure that the regulatory burden and the red tape that has smothered our free.
There's a lot packed in there about what their priorities are. And you see here on the right, I've got this article about this MAGA moonshot. And it's basically talking about what Johnson just mentioned, that Trump wants one big bill to do all this stuff. And so I think the irony of this is that literally a few weeks ago, when Elon Musk was tweeting about killing the end of year bill, the omnibus bill, that they were like, that we shouldn't vote for all this stuff in here, that we should have separate votes for everything. And basically, whenever you hear stuff like that, you can pretty easily discount it as, I don't like that my party's not passing this bill, and so that's why I'm going to come up with all these objections around why it's corrupt and pork and all the other stuff that they called it. But in this example, because it's a package of things that Elon and Trump support, and Johnson, that then it's one big beautiful bill. It's an efficiency thing that we need to pass one bill to cover everything. So, all of this is rhetoric. It's all spin. You shouldn't really put too much stock in it. But I think what is important here is that, now is where the rubber meets the road, where they actually have to govern. And like he said, he's going to have one of the slimmest majorities in modern history for the House of Representatives. And there's a lot of interference. I mean, even in the last couple of weeks, just so much interference from people like Elon Musk. Trump is famously very volatile and temperamental around what he wants in the bill and his priorities. Sometimes, he'd rather pick fights than he would govern, I think. And it's what I've been thinking about since election is basically there is only so much that they're going to get done in what's basically 2 years. In 2 years, there are midterm elections. And since Trump was elected, since Obama was elected in 2010, there's been big shifts in the House, right? Obama won in 2008. In 2010, the House went overwhelmingly Republican. Then they lost the Senate in 2014. When Trump won in 2016, they lost the House in 2018. And then basically gridlock. Joe Biden lost the House in 2022 and 2 years after his election. And here we are. So the Republicans have a trifecta. They're going to try to pass these massive bills, which is pretty in line with what the Democrats did in 2020. They passed the Inflation Reduction Act. And there was, these big bills that are meaty because you basically only get one, maybe two shots at this. And, they passed a COVID relief bill. But here, we're talking about different priorities. So there's immigration. It seems like, that is a major priority. So whether that's mass deportations, whether that's more funding for the wall, more funding for Border Patrol, all of the above. I think the thing to keep out for is like, how badly do they actually want to solve this problem, and how much do they enjoy using it as a cudgel against the opposition, against Democrats. So if they solve the problem, then they're not going to have anything to beat Democrats over the head with. Even Johnson just said, well, this is such a big problem that we might even get Democratic votes on it for some of these swing districts. So I wouldn't put past kind of everybody's incentivized to pass the border stuff. The thing that he's talking about, like, let's unleash the American economy or all these things, I think the picture's a little more complicated than that. There's definitely elements of inflation that are still stubborn. Housing prices are still very high. Mortgage interest rates or mortgage rates are, I think they just hit a 6-month high. So there are parts of the economy that people are frustrated with, but as a whole, when you look at employment, there's low unemployment, and for all that's been reported about how bad the U.S. economy is, we're doing better than most of our peers, and it's really, I think, a focus of just the perception that Joe Biden's inept, the Democrats are incompetent, which in some cases they are, but I wouldn't call it a disaster. I don't think many people call it. Think of it as a disaster. That's really more of a talking point for shows like this, and for them to cast themselves as kind of the saviors of the U.S. economy. The deregulation piece is interesting. What room is there to actually deregulate? Is it going to mean more drilling? How are they? How does the relationship with OPEC factor in here? Oil prices are global, so yes, the U.S. can pump more oil, but oil prices have been relatively stable for the last couple of years, and gas prices right now, it's not really the topic of conversation that it was in 2021, 2022, when inflation was starting to hit, and it was kind of Bidenomics, inflation, all that stuff. Between the Fed cutting interest rates and the stock market hitting all-time highs, there is a strong sense that the economy is strong at like the macro level. I think we were just over 3% GDP growth, but obviously there are a lot of people who are unhappy with the economy. So how much of that are they able to take credit for in terms of what does that actually mean for the average American when we're going to unleash the American economy and American energy dominance. And how do tariffs factor into it? So tariffs are going to be, if the Trump administration carries out the threat of tariffs, what inflationary effect is that going to have? If we have blanket tariffs across the board and we're going to be paying, 10% more for coffee or 10% more for bananas, things that don't necessarily come from China, then how much tolerance will people have for that? And I think at the end of the day, if between things like bird flu that are killing a lot of birds, and so they're driving up egg and chicken prices, and like fruit costs going up, EV credits or like anything like that going away. That's something that Elon Musk has expressed, that he's like all kind of credits should go away. How much patience are the American people going to have for this? And on the heels of, what happens immigration wise, if it seems like the Silicon Valley investors get preferential treatment over the average Americans, then I think, the honeymoon phase could dissipate. It's really all to say that, they're going to get one shot at passing their priorities, one, maybe two, with the skinny reconciliation thing. And the House, I think, is going to be a problem. They have talked about the debt ceiling, what's going to happen with the debt ceiling. You've got these hardliners in the GOP who won't vote for anything like that. Then you've got people who say, well, let's get rid of it altogether. And then there are people like Elizabeth Warren and I think Hakeem Jeffries has mentioned something about this, the speaker, that the minority leader, that maybe this is an opportunity to just get rid of it altogether and stop using the spending limit as a bargaining chip, because it can be so destructive that it really shouldn't be used by any party to hold the other one hostage. So this other article mentions that the no tax on tips is part of this priority for this bill, the tax cuts. So how the taxes are going to be expensive. So what are they going to cut? What kind of spending cuts? So they're going to be the social programs, the stuff that Trump has vowed never to touch. Is it going to be to the military? I don't know. It seems unlikely. But the GOP margin will soon shrink temporarily to zero. So in the Freedom Caucus, they're the holdouts. They are saying that border security has to be first, and then the second bill should be taxes, spending, energy, bureaucracy, and more. And then there's a Trump branded bill that basically, I think if it's one bill, then it's easier for them to whip all the votes together, threaten to primary people like Elon Musk has in the last couple weeks. So they're negotiating. The SALT cap it seems like it's on there. So there's eliminating the cap on federal deductions for state and local taxes. That's that's a high priority for swing member districts. So Republicans who are in swing districts like in California and New York, New Jersey. But there's a lot that this guy is going to have to juggle. And he's saying that they're going to have, a budget in February, and then this bill in April or May, could be into the fall. So, for all the talk of just what's going to happen in the first 100 days and how this stuff's going to unfold, government is slow. Government's going to take a long time. There's going to be unforeseen developments globally. There's everything that's going on in South Korea. There's AI regulation that is becoming more and more mainstream, and it's not going to be so simple as sort of, passing sweeping priorities. And I think they have the work cut out for them. And then you never have, Trump never makes it easy, Trump and Elon. But that's what's going on. That's the state of play in the House of Representatives and just how they're moving forward. I'll catch you later.